Hey everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to the Azam Sharp channel. And in this video, you'll be learning about how to do programmatic navigation or routing when you're using a TabView control in SwiftUI. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is to create tabs, obviously, right? I mean, if we are working with tab views, we need to create tabs. So let me go ahead and do that. And I will be creating all the code in the content view file, but it would be a good idea to separate it out into different files, but it just makes it easier to share. So let's go ahead and start with app screen. And I have covered this before, so I'm just going to go a little bit quickly over here. I'm going to say hashable, identifiable, and case iterable. And app screen is going to be an enum, which is going to represent all the different tabs that we will have in our application. And these tabs will be, let's say, the backyard birds, the plants, and the ID, because the ID is because we are using identifiable, so we need to provide the ID. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we need to provide some sort of a label, right? And we also want to provide the destination. Like when you display these different tabs, what will be the label you want to display? So I'm just going to create an extension, and it will be app screen. And on the app screen extension, now I can go ahead and create a label. A label will be just a property, and it's going to return you some view. And we can actually mark this with a view builder so that we can return any view that we want. And since we're returning any kind of a view or some view, we can perform a switch on the self, which is app screen itself. And now we can take a look at different cases for the backyards, the birds, and the plants. So for each case, we can return some sort of a label control. So there we go. We're now returning a label control based on the enum case that we have. And now let's go ahead and see that how we can display these tabs. So we have the content view over here. And just for displaying the tabs, I'm going to go ahead and create app tab view. So that will be responsible for displaying all the tabs. You can, I guess, do that in the content view, but just to separate it out into a different view, that's perfectly fine. And now I can have a body. This will be a tab view. And this is where we can pass in the selection. Selection means that which tab is going to get selected. All right. And I don't think we need all of this stuff. So let me do it again. I don't know why sometimes it just does a weird thing. Here we go. Again, it's doing it again. I don't really like that. So let's go ahead and say over here, selection, meaning whenever you select a tab, where that will go, it will go into a binding, which is called selection. And over here in the body, we will create the content. So these content will be all the different tabs that we actually set it up in the app screen. Let's go ahead and add that. There we go. Okay. So we have app screen, which are different enum cases, and we are going through each case. And we don't really have anything called destination over here. So we probably need to create a destination property in the app screen. And the destination is going to, well, take you to your destination. When you click on that, when you press on the tab, that is where it will take you. All right. So we need to create that destination property also in the app screen. So I'll create a destination as a property. It's going to return you some view. So this destination will be the destination of the tab. When you select a tab, where will it take you? Again, we'll do a self case backyard. So where would it take you if you press the tab on the backyards? Well, right now we're just going to say backyards. And the same thing we're going to do over here. Then we have like birds. Where would that tab go? What view will that tab display? Simply a text view, which we'll simply call birds. And we will say plants. All right. Now, this selection part, you can see that it's complaining that because there is no such thing as selection over here. So what we need to do is we need to create a binding over here. Binding var selection, and that will be of type app screen. That will be the selection that someone is going to be passing to the app tab view, and that will get selected. The content view will be our root view. So, and we haven't really got into the part of programmatic navigation right now. I mean, we're just trying to figuring out how to display the tab view. So in the content view over here, I'm just going to remove all of this stuff and use the app tab view, which is responsible for displaying all the 3 tabs that we have. But for the selection now, I can go ahead and pass in for the selection like backyards. And you should be able to see that backyard is selected because I'm passing a constant value of backyards. What about if I pass in birds? There we go. And another thing to note over here is that whenever this particular tab is selected, the corresponding view that we set up, which is right over here, is being displayed. So for the birds, it is displaying a text view, which is simply birds. Now, if I go ahead and click on plants, then it displays that particular text view, which is for plants. Pretty cool, right? Okay, great. But we don't really want this to be a constant. We want to change this. And if we want to change this, we can create a state property over here, which can be private var selection, and it will be app screen. And you can default it to whatever you want. So we're just going to default it to backyards. And as a selection, now we can pass the binding for the selection. So this means that when the app tab view is going to change this, this is going to also take effect on the content view also, because that is passed as a binding. All right. Let's go ahead and build it. And let's see. Still building. Okay, everything is working fine right now. You can see that we can select different tabs, and whenever we select the tab, the text over here changes, or the destination changes, and it displays that destination. Now all of this is done by looping through all the different cases that we have in app screen, and then using the screen.destination, which is a view, and then providing a particular tab as well as the tab item to that. All right. So this is the formula for creating your tabs and also displaying the screen associated with the actual tag. Okay. So this is great. We are on the right track. Now, one of the things over here that we need to do is when you click on any of these things, right now we're just displaying a text view. All of these are text views right here. But this should be something else, right? I mean, you want to display something over here that will have its own navigation. So this is where we will have to create navigation stacks for every single tab. So when I click on backyards, then I may create some sort of a list, and now I'm doing a navigation. I'm going to the detail of that list, but that navigation is only for the backyards, not for the birds, not for the plants, just for the backyard, just for that particular tab. So we have to provide all that stuff. But before we do that, let's take a small break and thank the sponsor for this video. This video is sponsored by azamsharp.school. This is one of the largest iOS development catalogs out there right now. I mean, we have around 17 courses, and these courses, I think I will be adding more and more courses. So by the time you're looking at this video, this might be like 19 courses or 18 courses or so, or 20, and 96 plus hours of content. Now just think about that, 96 plus hours of content. And look at these courses: MV design pattern, test-driven development, reactive programming, reality kit, Swift data, full stack iOS development. I mean, nobody is doing a course, is creating a course on full stack iOS development. I'm the only one who is doing that. server-driven UI. You can change your UI based on the server's response. I mean, look at these courses, and this just goes on and on forever. ChatGPT also. So all of these courses are available to you for either an annual membership of $249 or a monthly membership of $25, which will give you access to not only these courses, but all the future courses also. And I plan to do a lot more courses in 2024. So definitely check out at azamsharp.teachable.com and enjoy all of these videos. Thank you. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. All right, welcome back. So the first thing we need to do is replace these text views with something else. I mean, text view, obviously, we need to create like a navigation stack for them. Like each of these views that we are displaying, like the backyards and the birds and the plants, they can have their own navigation stack. So let me go ahead and create something over here. Let's start with probably with the backyards, right? So we'll start with the backyards, and you'll see that how this navigation stack looks like. I mean, we're just going to use some dummy data over here, nothing crazy. There we go. So this is the backyard navigation stack. And if I replace this with the backyard navigation stack, let's do that, backyard navigation stack, then this becomes kind of like the root of the backyards tab, right? When you have a backyards tab, then it's backyard navigation stack. And I'm calling it navigation stack because it does have a navigation stack, and all the navigation you're going to do when you're on the backyards tab is going to be on this particular stack. And that's the most important part, because when you have multiple tabs over here, then you need to make sure that each of these tabs have their own separate navigation. Now, we haven't really gotten to the point of any programmatic navigation, which we'll cover a little bit later, but we are still trying to figure out how to have different navigation stacks because we are on different tabs. Now, when I'm on the backyards tab, this is serving as the root view, backyard navigation stack view. And I can go and navigate to something else. I can go to plants view, birds view, but when I go back to the backyards view, I will still be there. So it's not like it's going to reset or anything. And that's what I'm talking about. The backyard navigation stack view contains a navigation stack which is just going to be used for that particular tab. So we need to do this for other views also. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to create our other view. Let's say birds view. That's a good idea. Let's go ahead and do the birds view. Say birds navigation stack, which will be a view, body, and we'll just call it right now birds navigation stack. And now I can change this to something else. Let's say birds navigation stack. This means when I go to birds, it shows birds navigation stack. All right. Well, this is all fine. I mean, it works and everything. But what if I wanted to do some sort of a programmatic navigation? I mean, how will that even work? And by programmatic navigation, I actually mean that maybe in our code over here, maybe I have I will have a navigation stack. I think that's for sure, because each of these tabs have a different navigation stack. So that's fine. Navigation stack is fine. There we go. But maybe I also have a button over here and it says, go to bird detail. I mean, it can be anything, right? Okay, so when I have this, go to bird detail, how can I make sure that when I click this button, I can go to the bird detail? Now I can use this, I can replace this with a navigation link and perform that action. But maybe I want to log in, and that's going to take like an async request. And after the async request completes, then I want to go there. All right. So how can we go to the detail? Like maybe there's some async function going on over here. Async function, and then which takes a little bit of time. and then you want to perform the navigation. So how can we do that? So this is the question, that how can we provide, or how can we do programmatic navigation, which is different for each of these stacks that we're talking about. All right. And the way that you do programmatic navigation is, in the navigation stack, you pass something over here, right? I mean, if I go over here and let's say I create a state, and we can say var, and it will be like, say, routes string equals to empty. I mean, this might be your starting point, that you're creating routes inside the Bird's navigation stack, which is an array. And if you want to do programmatic navigation, then you simply pass in path, and then you pass in the routes. All right. And whenever you click this button, which is go to bird detail, you take the routes and you append something over here. And it can be anything, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. But whenever you add something over here, then at that point, you can also subscribe to the navigation destination. And this navigation destination will be for the string. And the destination, well, in this case, we're going to get the route, and we can go somewhere over here. All right. So this is where you can actually take the user somewhere. So let's say bird detail. So let's go ahead and check this out. If I go to birds, I can see go to bird detail. I can click and I'm on the bird detail. So this is definitely working. But nobody is going to be using strings over here. So we need to replace this part with something else. I mean, string is kind of hard, right? So let's go ahead and replace it with something else. How about we call it bird route, which is going to be hashable. And we will have a couple of different things. We'll have home, and we will have a detail where you can pass in string. I mean, it can be anything that you can pass in, but we're just going to pass in string. But I think in the actual application, you should be passing in the bird structure or some sort of a data related to bird. And now I can go over here and change this to bird route. All right. This is fine. This is not fine. So we'll say routes dot append, and we will try to go to the detail, passing in some sort of a bird over here. Let's say a sparrow. It doesn't really matter for our case. And for the navigation destination, this will become the bird route dot self. All right. So all of this should still work. I mean, if I go to the detail, it still works. But one thing that we have done is we have created a bird route, which is our route as an enum, and all the different routes that's going to happen from inside the bird navigation stack can now be represented by bird enum. The problem with this approach, or one of the problems with this approach, is right now you're over here, right, in the bird navigation stack, and you created a state property, which is great, but this state property is only available inside this particular view, the view that you are in right now, right? I mean, this particular property, routes, is not available anywhere else. Like if I go over here and create a bird detail screen, I mean, there will be no way to access that particular state property. So from the bird detail screen, I may not be able to access those routes or add to the routes or delete from the routes. So if we have the bird detail screen and that is where we're going, we can say bird detail screen. Obviously, I should be passing in the actual bird part. Well, that's not really a route anymore. It should be like a bird route or something. So we will have bird route. And depending on like what do we want to do over here, we can just say route, I guess. Switch on the route case. If it's home, then you take them home, whichever the home route is. And if it is detail, we'll get something over here, probably like the bird name. And now we can go to bird detail screen, and probably we can pass in the name of the bird. Let's go ahead and update the bird detail screen also to be name. And then we can display it over here. All right, let's go ahead and build it. Okay, so if I go to birds and I click on go to bird detail screen, it just says sparrow because that's the bird that we're passing. So everything works. The problem is that inside the bird detail screen, I cannot really access the routes. The routes are state variables, so they're only our local state inside the bird navigation stack. So what should we do in this situation? I mean, what happens if I want to perform something over here and add to the routes, right? I mean, maybe I want to fetch an image of the bird, and then when the image is fetched, I want to take the user to a bird photo screen or something like that. So what can we do over here? I mean, I can have a button over here, bird photo screen, and then I should be able to do ads.routes.append and whatever, let's say photo. I mean, obviously we don't really have any photo screen over here in the bird route, but what if we did? How can we do that? So we can't really access routes over here in the bird detail screen because the routes are local private state, which are only available in the bird navigation stack. So we need to change this part. And we need to make sure that we can access all of these things. And this is what the whole video is all about. How can we create this kind of like a global thing so everyone can access the routes? So one way of doing this is to create a router. And I'm just going to go ahead and mark this with observable. And I think we may need to import observation framework also. Import observation. And what we're going to do inside the router is that we are going to handle all the different routes. So I'm just going to go ahead and say bird routes, bird route. And if we have any other routes like plant routes and all those things, like if I had plant route, we can create a plant route, not a big deal. So let's go and create, just like a bird route, I can create a plant route. And then I can say plant routes. Can you guess that where the plant routes will be, used? Well, this tab right there. So if I'm on the plant route, all the navigation, the deep hierarchy that's going to happen, programmatically that's going to happen, will be over here in that tab, plant routes. So now we have a router which contains the bird routes and the plant routes. And now we need to inject this particular router somewhere into our application. And this is where you can inject this into your content view as an environment. So I can go ahead and say environment right over here, and I can say router. Okay. And in your actual application, I mean, if I go over here, you can always create like a state, because that part was only for the preview, right? But if you want to do it over here, we can create the router. And I guess we don't really have a navigation stack in this, so I don't think that is supposed to be inside the navigation stack anyways. So we'll say environment, and we can simply pass in the router. So that should also work. But since we're dealing with the previews over here, that's why I'm injecting it like this. Okay. So once we injected the router as an environment, state or a global state, then anywhere in any, whether it is a bird navigation stack, whether it is bird detail screen, anywhere we can access that easily. And the way that we access that is by not using the state, because that's a private variable. We're going to use the environment. So I'm just going to use environment. I'm going to get the type or the actual router using environment and then router.self. And then we can simply get that particular router. All right. Now, when we get the router, you may be very tempted to write something like this, router dot, and this is bird routes. But this doesn't really work like that because this is supposed to be a binding. So you might put like a dollar sign over here, but still it's not going to like that. And one of the ways to do that is to use the new bindable wrapper over here and get the actual router. So router equals to router. If we just assign it to the bindable, then you will be able to perform this binding. But if you try to bind it directly to the environment, then it doesn't work. Next up, we need to figure out what to do over here. So we'll say router dot, and now you have access to all of these different routes, but we're going to use the bird routes, append the new element, detail, and now we can pass the same thing that we were doing before. So it should work now. Let's go to birds, and it still works, all right? But the good news about this is if you ever want to, if you have a bird detail screen over here, and you want to perform a route, then all you need to do is to get access to that particular router, which you can by using the environment because it is global, and then you should be able to access that. All right, so now I think we should be able to say router dot bird routes dot append, and it should be able to take you somewhere. Let's say home. Obviously, home is not a place to go in this case, but let's see if that actually takes us somewhere. So I'll say birds, bird detail screen, and home. Perfect, right? And the great thing about this is you have this router which is added or injected as a global, which contains the bird routes and the plant routes. Now you can go to the backyard navigation or plant navigation, and you can add all of that stuff also. Where's the plant navigation? Not sure where the plants are, but if we had the plant navigation, you can do it over there, or for the backyard navigation. So if you have a backyard navigation, then I would create another enum over here, backyard route, and I will create another one over here, which is backyard routes, which will be a backyard route. And now your router is going to handle all the different stacks for each tab that you have, because keeping in mind that each tab can have a deeply nested navigation which is only for that particular tab. So that is why if you are in backyards, you will be adding something to the backyard routes. All right, so this is one of the ways that you can do that by using a global state, and global state obviously, which means that every view can access these routes if they have to. All right, so this is how you will implement a really nice and simple router for when you are using a TabView application, and each tab needs to provide a different navigation stack. And this technique you should only be using for programmatic routing. I mean, not for every single thing. And most of the time you won't really have programmatic routing. I mean, you will, but not most of the time. Most of the time you might be like, okay, I click on this list item and now it displays the detail, and that's pretty much it, or things like that. I mean, you won't really have some programmatic routing that much in your application unless your application is a little bit different. But anyways, you have access to the code. I'll post it and definitely check it out. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video, and also once again check out azamsharp.teachable.com. This is a great resource, and all of these courses are available at a monthly membership. You can still buy these courses if you want for individual price, but obviously membership is much better, right? You get all of these courses plus the future courses. I mean, 96 hours of content, that's a lot. All right, so thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.